What's going on, everybody? This is Case Study QB, and we are presenting to you a new show. I'm calling this the Case Study QB Progressive War Room. Yes, the War Room. There's a lot of strategy that goes on behind the scenes. There's a lot of nitty-gritty stuff that you guys don't get to see, you guys don't get to experience. And I really want to shine a light on that for two reasons. Because I want you guys to see that it's not as hard as you think. Running for office is not a big mythical thing that only special people can do. This is something that we just need normal people who are leaders, who have charisma, and who is passionate about their policies and the policy that they believe in. Today, I have Niko House and Hector Osigeda joining me in the Progressive War Room. Most people know Niko House as an online political commentator, but he also has experience on the campaign as a surrogate for Jill Stein and Tulsi Gabbard. He also was the president for Carolina Students for Bernie Sanders and was the president for North Carolina Colleges for Bernie Sanders. Finally, he was the acting state director for Bernie Sanders' 2016 campaign, and he was also the senior strategist for Kenneth Spaulding's campaign in 2016. Next, I have Hector Osigeda, who ran a hard-fought race in the Democratic primary for District 8 in New Jersey. Since then, he has announced that he will continue his activism in the Union City area.
So, Case, thank you so much for having me on again. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be on with Niko. Thank you so much for, holding court and giving us space to discuss these very important issues and touch on topics that I know a lot of progressives are discussing amongst themselves. And it's good to give a big platform to these sorts of conversations.
The movement for a People's Party. The convention just passed this past week. I want to get into a couple questions in regards to the movement for a People's Party. The first, how can they get on the ballot access in all 50 states? Should the MPP run candidates in the Democratic Party or on their own party line? How can the MPP learn from the mistakes of the Green Party? And the MPP is not going to be covered by what I like to call not the mainstream media, but the capitalist media. Or if they are covered, it will be in a negative way. How can the MPP get their word out and gain mainstream notoriety? Ballot access. Go ahead, Niko.
So the ballot access is a tricky question because basically every single state has different requirements for ballot access. But I do like what they've done to get started, which is they haven't focused on personality like other parties in the past, whether it be like the Green Party, for example. Whenever they first announced, they ran behind Howie Hawkins rather than taking the momentum from the Green Party, because they came up with the idea because the Green Party ran and did very well in Canada the year that Howie decided to run for the first time. And so instead of taking the momentum from the Green Party and creating more, a bigger Green Party apparatus, it was let's get behind a person. And there are some shortcomings that come with that. Not that it's a bad idea, but it depends on what your goal is. And I would assume that everybody here is expecting MPP's long-term goal to be a sustainable party that can actually win federal elections. As far as ballot initiatives are concerned, it's my understanding after talking to Nick Bryna that they've been introducing a lot of ballot initiatives and setting up state party apparatus all over the country. Oh, wow. Paying very close attention and holding classes, by the way, having, holding these seminars, if you will, on how to get a party started, how to get ballot access in your specific state, because like I said, every state varies. And therefore, not only, so you don't have to wait for the national level party to give you the green light. It's kind of up to you, which I personally appreciate because I'm all for decentralization when it comes to things like that. Also, you have to hire lawyers 2 years ago, if I'm being frank. They should have already been hired because you need to be challenging.
For 2024, Niko? For 2024?
They should have been. So, and I understand, once again, money's an issue. So, let's keep that in context. But basically, you have to start challenging at a judicial level the legitimacy of the restrictive ballot access in a lot of these states and explore how you got to the point where only the Republican or the Democratic Party can have legitimate ballot access, debate, stage access, et cetera, et cetera. These battles can take 3 to 4 to 6 to, I mean, in the case of the DNC for All lawsuit, it was from 2016 to 2020. right? So that's 4 years just for that, for it to be dismissed. Imagine if you actually are winning the case and they're trying to appeal. That could take 7 to 8 years.
What you think about them getting ballot access, Hector?
Honestly, I would say that getting ballot access in all 50 states is like too far ahead for where the MPP is now. Like, if they're going to be taken seriously as a third party, they need to win local races and win statewide races. So I think 2024 is a little bit too ambitious, because you do need all of this infrastructure in every single state, all 50 states, to get the ballot access. So I think that MPP should really, if they're going to be taken seriously and legitimately, they should actually work on winning local races first.
I know one thing that I want to say about it is I did a little bit of research, and there's a guy that I want to reach out to him, see if I could get him. He's like a ballot access journalist. Like, he really knows a lot about it. And one thing that I saw that he talked about was how they changed the rules, like at the last minute. So you could do whatever you want. You could conform to whatever they tell you to do, get as many signatures as they ask, but then at the last minute they say, oh man, we wanted 5,000 signatures, but now we decided to make it 10,000. And then, you know, maybe it's a day or two before, you know, I need to get find out some better examples, some strict examples of that. But he was talking about how they like to change the rules at the last minute. Should the MPP run candidates in the Democratic Party or on their own party line? Let me go straight to Hector on this one.
Well, again, it goes to what state you're talking about. I know that in certain states, it is possible for you to run as an MPP candidate. In some states, they have jungle primaries that they don't really put a restriction on what party you can belong in a race. But in a state like New Jersey, it would really not make any sense to run on your own party line, because at the end of the day, like in New Jersey, it's not even a two-party state. It's literally a one-party state, and the Democratic Party runs everything. So if you were to run on a different line, you would basically relegate yourself to never getting elected. And I think that would be a big mistake. At least that's the case in New Jersey. Other states are going to have different rules.
So, I mean, I actually agree with what Hector said. You have to kind of have to do a deep dive and figure out which state is strategically the best. Now, I would say that, so like Justice Democrats did something like that, and they got it right a couple of times, but they also have a lot of examples where they were running candidates in races where like they should not have been running candidates, because there might have already been a progressive sitting in that seat, or they're challenging somebody they just had no business challenging, at least, you know, with that small apparatus. But they did find some vulnerable seats and took advantage of it. So I think that, you know, really MPP kind of needs to come up with like this think tank. A real think tank to dig deep into every single piece of you know, political apparatus around the country, figure out how to infiltrate and puncture and pierce until we create you know, you create a lot of sprinkles, but then eventually you'll create a flood. And I think that in Hector's point really just bolsters that. You can't necessarily do that in New Jersey, for example. However, in a place like Florida with local elections, you definitely can get away with it. Commissioner, which in Florida, kind of like New York, the commissioner has more power than the mayor, you know, because they control where the money goes and what projects get approved. And then the Congress people may approve the money, but if the commission doesn't approve the project, so you got a lot of ways you can infiltrate. And then of course, running your own candidates does put you in a good position to fundraise and of course grow your brand. And that's kind of like what Working Families Party has done in the past, like in the states that they can run candidates as Democrats while simultaneously running them as Working Families Party members, which is what they did with Crowley, AOC. They've done it several times in the past. That gives them more name recognition. And so we've seen people become successful using that strategy of hey, I'm just going to attach my name to you.
So how can the MPP learn from the mistakes of the Green Party? We know that this is another party that is supposed to be progressives, but they have been wreaked with a lot of issues with this last nomination.
As we know, unfortunately, Howie Hawkins stole the nomination. It's just basically just accepted now. I covered it from start to finish, and he got called out. And the reason why he was able to get away with it, well, because his people essentially were also in charge of like establish a different committee. So they refused to create a rules and ethics committee, something I hope the MPP does not imitate. They have to really create an environment of trust That is one thing that has to be done. Rules and ethics committees, rules and bylaws committees, like you need to make sure that you are accountable in the whoever is the most important to the success to the MPP at the time, which we all know varies depending on what the year is. They have to be held to the highest of standards, because if you don't hold them to the highest of standards, understand the party that you're running against or the candidate that you're running against will absolutely hold them to the highest of standards. And so you kind of have to keep that in check. And also, once again, the Green Party only wants to become active in election years, which we can kind of say right now that that's clearly not true for MPP, because we've been hearing about them in 2016. And then we heard about them all the time, 2017, 2018, all the different products they had. They constantly stay in the eye of independent media, not after an election started, but in between when they were trying to get state parties set up. So taking advantage of that. And of course, like I said, taking the judicial system seriously. You can use the judicial system to your advantage in a lot of different ways if you have the money to do so. And as a party, you should. And if you are able to even just bring attention, you can bring attention, you can win, but you don't necessarily even have to win the case to bring attention to what you're doing. And you can give that inspiration to other people, other third parties that I just feel like the Libertarian and Green Party both have not necessarily done, because I think that it's just easier to focus on the election years. But when you're trying to start something brand new, you gotta start that 5, 6, 7 years in advance if you want to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I think the biggest mistake that they could make would be to only show up in election years. And I think that Niko is 100% on point with that. If the MPP is going to be real serious, they have to keep up the momentum outside of election years and not just show up every 4 years, because that's the best way to just get branded as like a fifth or sixth party that nobody's going to take seriously.
I watched some of your coverage, Niko, on the Green Party's, the shenanigans that went down, and they also were changing rules at the last minute when it comes to the different people who were running. And I think something that the People's Party should definitely hold dear to their heart is transparency. You got to be as transparent as possible. Where's the money going? The money, whatever money they're taking in. And I understand to a certain extent that strategy-wise, you don't want to let everybody know where certain money is going when it comes to running ads and this and certain things like that. But for the most part, we don't want to see what we saw with the DNC, where I think it was
talking about Donna Brazile.
Donna Brazile, she came when she took
with Hillary Clinton victory.
Yeah. In her book, she talked about how there was a whole bunch of shenanigans going on there. That if there was transparency, transparency does two things. First, it lets the people know and have confidence in what's going on, but then it also puts pressure on the people who are handling the money to manage it properly, because they know somebody's looking over my shoulders at all times. MPP is not going to be covered by the capitalist media, or if they are covered, it will be in a negative way. How can the MPP get their word out and gain mainstream notoriety?
The best way to get your word out is to be present everywhere, to always, know what's going on in the streets, keep your ear to the ground, know what people are talking about, and be ready to activate at a moment's notice. So being present is going to get you a lot of points, and it's going to, eventually you're going to get noticed by even the more capitalist media. They won't be able to avoid talking about you.
Yeah, I agree. And I would say that, so this is something I actually helped with Tim Canova for a bit, and it's something that I've tried to help all local candidates who do ask for my help to implement, which you kind of have to have two strategies. You have to have an online strategy. And I don't mean online in the sense that you have to win voters online, because that's kind of like, depending on what the race is. But you do need people to be inspired by your campaign, because when you get donations from around the country, in my opinion, that is representative of the diversity that you bring to the table, that you can use to apply in your local races. When you get other people interested in your campaign, it's inspiring not only for yourself and your voters, but your campaign team. They're like, wow, so this is something that people actually care about, and we're doing this the right way. You saw that happen in AOC's race. You see that happen in Rashida Tlaib's race. People have been trying to protect Rashida Tlaib because she actually had the most dangerous race, if I recall. They were challenging her, and her district is not necessarily a safe district, even though it is largely Muslim. But because of the international mandate, or national, or I guess now it is international for Rashida Tlaib, but because of that mandate that she had, she received donations outside of her district. And so if we're not going to take super PAC money, then we have a burden put on us where we now have to kind of get the people to unite behind us, like they get the corporations to unite behind them on the establishment side, right? And so so you kind of have to run that double strategy. Make it so that or national news has a reason to cover you, even if that means you have to be outlandish sometimes. I know that sounds crazy, but like when, for example, Tulsi Gabbard called Hillary Clinton the queen of warmongers, that was her best fundraising quarter. She beat like 3 or 4 of them. Well, put it like this: other candidates who did not have the quarter that she had, and some who even did better, had to drop out after because they didn't have the attention nor the money. And so sometimes being yourself and telling it like it is the best strategy. And some people kind of go out of their way to not engage in that type of politics, but like that's still politics. Being honest, I know it's kind of like a foreign concept nowadays to people. They feel like they have to kind of be buttoned up and have to say the right things, and but sometimes it's okay to just be yourself and hang loose a bit and get the positive attention from it, get the negative attention from it, and then weaponize it going forward to hopefully carry you to victory.
Definitely. I totally agree with you guys. I think people like you, people like Kyle Kalinske, people like, the Convo Couch, we have a lot of independent media stations, and definitely TYT have given voice to a lot of progressives running. And I think a lot of people would agree that we're not at the strength yet of a mainstream media. I think of people like my mother-in-law, who I love, who watches the CNNs and the MSNBCs of the world. And it's just like you have brand.
My mother-in-law, who I love, but
right?
That's
they
funny,
have
man.
like brand loyalty to these stations that they've been watching for so long, and I can't wait until we get to a point where everyone has their, as long as you're an honest actor, as long as you're given the full context, that's the people that I want the American people to be watching. And I love it when we call out those people who are not honest actors, like the CNNs of the world. We talked about Andrew Cuomo, and we talked about Sean Hannity, who had the same talking point about how AOC did not say Joe Biden's name during the nomination when it was supposed to be all about Bernie. Like, come on, guys. I actually had this conversation with my mother-in-law, and I went back in 2016 when Tulsi did it for Bernie. She never mentioned Biden's name, Hillary's name. And then I went back.
Yeah, why would she?
Exactly, right? So then I went back to 2008, and I watched, it was Dolores, she was the labor activist, and then there was 2 other people that second her. So there's 3 people that spoke while Bernie had AOC, and there was another person that spoke. But back when Hillary's person did it for her, there was 3 people that spoke. The only person that mentioned Barack Obama was the first speaker.
I stand with Hillary as she stands with Barack Obama to take our country back.
That's the kind of dishonesty that I do not want the American people listening to. So in the clip, in the comments below, I want you to give us your opinion of the Movement for People's Party. Remember, this is the Progressive War Room. It's including everybody. I want all of you to participate. We're doing this together. We're bringing all our brain power together to see how we can strategize to get the Movement for People's Party strong and ready to go in 2022 if they run people, and also definitely in 2024 when they're ready to go.